Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creative Writing Meetup in VR, hosted by educators in VR. My name is Tangwystle, and I will be standing in for Laurel today. The mission, excuse me, oh my goodness. I also have a very severe thunderstorm right now, so if I disappear, that's why. The mission for Creative Writing Meetup is to provide a supportive environment in VR where writers of all sorts can be creative comfortably, share their work, and learn more about the art of writing. When we do share our work, the rule is everything is fiction. This is just to protect the privacy and comfort of participants, so attendees are not allowed to ask if the events of a story really happened to the author or to someone they know or anything like that. But while I'm standing in for Laurel doing my Odyssey and ink workshop, we'll be doing a little more learning than sharing. So current events on the schedule for Creative Writing Meetup. I am doing Odyssey in ink until I believe the 16th of September. September 25th, Laurel is coming back and she has some very exciting things planned with AI and storytelling. I'm very curious to see what she has there. October is our scary storytelling month. November, we'll be doing VR Rimo, which will be an entire month where we will meet basically every day to write together in VR, to play with prompts, and just focus on building our creative repertoire and skills. And then December is another holiday, big annual holiday storytelling event, excuse me. So as I said earlier, my name is Tangwystle. That's not my legal name, but that's what I go by when I'm working online. You can also call me Tang if that's easier for you to pronounce. I've been writing for almost 30 years and publishing for over 5 through Worldsmyths. I'm currently developing the Odyssey and Ink project under the publishing umbrella of Worldsmyths. We are a small nonprofit that educates and supports writers of all kinds. We have a strong emphasis on education with lots of tools and resources, and we provide publishing opportunities for anyone willing to put the time and energy into the process. We also maintain a diverse and inclusive community where anyone is welcome. The Odyssey in Ink project, for those who missed the introduction video to this series, is my effort to put together a comprehensive and updated series of short lessons for the writing process from the very first glimmer of an idea all the way through to what you should do after you finally publish. It covers a broad array of topics from writing and grammar fundamentals to finding good help for professional editing to being your own marketing team and a whole lot more. We dig deep into these subjects, but we try to keep the information very concise and on point. The workshop today is actually part of a pilot program for taking Odyssey and Ink into a more interactive format. So we'll have opportunities for questions and audience participation. Excuse me. Today's objectives. Today we'll be covering the basics of writing a query letter and going over each part. As we do, we'll pause periodically for a few minutes so you can work on a sample, and at the end of the lesson today, you will hopefully have a first draft for a basic query letter. So what exactly is a query letter, just for those who don't know? It is a one-page business letter that authors send out to literary agents or, in some cases, directly to publishers. Traditionally speaking, publishers don't accept unsolicited query letters. You're expected to go through an agent, but as always, times are changing. Some smaller and newer publishers do accept unsolicited query letters. If they do, they will have guidelines just like most literary agents. A brief word of warning. These guidelines, they are very important. You do not want to skip them. You do not want to avoid looking for them. This is not a thing you can save yourself time on. You don't want to break the rules of the guidelines to try and stand out. For the most part, you will be dealing with experienced professionals who have standards and want to work with authors who respect their time. One of the ways you show that you respect their time is by doing your homework before you submit a query and following the guidelines the publisher or agent has posted. Speaking as a publisher who does regular calls for submissions, if you submit to Worldsmyths and disregard our formatting standards, our genre preferences, or other guidelines, that is going to be an automatic rejection because it tells me that you don't really care about getting your story published with my publishing house and that you either can't or won't follow simple and reasonable requests that really do make my job easier. And that's just not someone I want to work with, no matter how good their story is. So when you're querying, remember, you're representing yourself as a business professional, just as much as you are presenting your story for consideration. You want to make things as easy and appealing as possible for the agent you're inquiring with. Anything that makes their job harder is going to fast track your letter and your manuscript to the rejection pile. So know your audience, do your research, follow the guidelines, and customize your basic query letter appropriately, starting with the opening. That's what we're going to talk about now. There are a lot of options for opening your query letter, but I'm only going to cover two, the personal approach and the pitch approach. We'll cover some examples and some do's and don'ts along the way, but I do want to take a moment to address why I'm not covering all of the options that are out there. Some of you, if you've done a little research into query letters, may have heard that it's best to open a query letter like a story and go for a hooky opening paragraph to try and grab the agent's attention, or that you should open with your professional credentials like awards and prior publications, or about a million other things. Everybody thinks they've got the best way to open a query letter, and I'm kind of no exception to that. But I also am going to give you my reasons for why I think I have the best. These other methods can work, but I don't recommend them. I don't recommend the hook opening because it can be very hit or miss due to things that are entirely outside your control, like the agent's mood when they open your letter. Things outside of your control that can seriously impact your chance of success are things you want to try and avoid in your calculations. I also don't recommend opening with your credentials as the main point of your query letter, as the main point of your query letter is to sell your book, not necessarily yourself. If you're already a bit of a celebrity, that can be something of an exception, but for the most part, I deal with authors who are either new to the published writing or have a lot of experience. So I don't tend to work with too many celebrities. Okay, I am back, and we are trying to pick up more or less where we left off. So we're gonna just dive right in with the personal approach, and I'm not gonna worry about shooting down other approaches too hard. This approach, as I see it, can go one of two ways. Either you're going to have a personal connection to the agent, or you don't. Your personal connection could be something as minor as a brief meeting at a conference. I think Laurel was just talking about that a little bit. Or it could be an interaction online during a digital pitch event or something similar. The other option is you might get a referral from a mutual friend in the industry who says, hey, your book would probably be right up so-and-so's alley. Why don't you pitch to them? So I have up behind me on the projector an example of an opening line for a query letter if you had met the agent at an event, like at a physical event. And it's just very, very simple. Dear Ms. Hartford, we met recently at the Pitch Slam Fest in Nowhere, New York. You asked for me to follow up with a query letter and the first chapter of my novel, Redemption. That's it. After that, I would jump right into the pitch of my novel. which is the main portion of your query letter. It's just very short, very simple, very straight and to the point. You don't want to linger with idle chit-chat about sharing drinks or throw in extraneous details you may have picked up from doing your homework a la online stalker style. I've heard stories of things even as simple as, oh my gosh, your cat looks just like the main character's cat in my novel, somehow getting into a query letter, and it absolutely backfires every time. This is not important information from a business perspective, and it can also be very disconcerting, even alarming, for the agent who is getting this letter from a total or near total stranger who is talking about their pet like they've been best friends for years. It's weird. Don't do it. To a lot of uninitiated novelists, this kind of commentary might seem very harmless and off the cuff, but try and put yourself in the agent's shoes. This is a business letter from a stranger, and you want to keep things professional and on point. You don't want to spook your agent, you don't want to bore your agent, you don't want to put them off in any way. So just keep things very tight and professional with the query letter. Likewise, if you were referred by a friend, you don't want to spend a lot of time chit-chatting about your mutual friend. That's not the point of the query letter. Your query letter is there to sell your book and to sell yourself. Sorry. Another example of a good opening. Dear Mr. Schneider, I'm writing to you because our mutual friend Ellen spoke very highly of your skills as a literary agent and recommended I send you a query regarding my literary speculative fiction novel, Redemption. Query letters are a lot like writing in that you have to remember certain basic fundamentals. Keep in mind your purpose and your audience as you write and as you revise. You want to make a good impression, and a little flattery doesn't usually hurt, but you don't want to overdo it, and you absolutely don't want to try and fake it. If you have no personal reference at all, you can still do what I call the personal approach by demonstrating you did your homework. In your opening, you can mention a book or two that the agent has worked on and that is relevant to the work you're pitching. This also tackles comp titles, which we'll discuss later. And what this does is it gives the agent a very quick grounding in what you're offering. So for an example of doing your homework, Redemption, by the way, is a novel I am actually working on right now. Dear Mrs. Mendez, I really enjoyed the exploration of morally gray protagonists in Second Chances by Emily McAutherperson. Oh, I'm sorry, I changed that to Emily Smith. My own novel, Redemption, explores similar ground, but with a speculative fiction twist, metahumans. It also has periodic action sequences to break up the heavy introspection, like Am I Paranoid by J.J. Brown. In this theoretical, I have made up the reference novels, of course, along with the agent. But in this theoretical, I am giving Miss Mendez comparative titles so that she has some idea of what I'm trying to offer her. And one of the beautiful things about this particular approach, even if you have a personal introduction, you can combine your personal line with this element, is in one paragraph, in less than 30 seconds of reading, this agent has a solid idea of my work. They have a solid idea that I am familiar with their work and that I am very serious about publishing my novel. And these are key things you want to communicate in your query letter. You want to pack each line with information, but you also want to fill up the space between lines with strong implications that you are a good prospect. If you're not comfortable with this approach, or if you just want to cut to the chase and go straight to the pitch, that is also a very legitimate option. Some agents do not like the personal approach at all. So going back to those guidelines, if they say they don't want that personal touch, don't try and do it. Just go straight to the pitch. The pitch is going to be the main body of your query letter. It's going to take up probably 50 to 70% of your query letter, which it should, because that is your chance to show off your novel or whatever it is you're writing and working on. Now, I primarily focus on fiction writing, so my pitch is centered around those concepts. And the keys here are very much the same as for a story. Oh, excuse me. Now this is the part where we're gonna do a little bit of writing. So while I'm talking, I do want people to either open up a blank document or grab a pen and paper, something to scribble on. If you don't have a story of your own that you feel comfortable using as we go through this, go ahead and feel free to pick a famous title and use that work to just kind of go through the process. Excuse me. If you're not opening with your pitch and you are opening with a personal touch, don't get hung up on your transition. This is a query letter, and like many genres, that carries certain expectations. The number one thing you want to do is convince the agent your story is worth their time. But a very close secondary objective is you don't want to waste their time. So the key points here in the pitch are going to be the key points of any good story. They need to know who your main character is. They need some idea of what the setting is, and they need to know what the stakes and goals and obstacles are. And they need to know the tone of your writing. And they need to know this in about 300 words. That is a lot for a few words, a lot of work for a few hundred words to do, and it can be very overwhelming to think about trying to condense your novel down to that size. So one option that I have found very helpful is to start with everything that seems important off the top of your head. This is called a brain dump. Just write everything down as it comes to you, just a big fat mess, and then cut it down, restructure it, and refine it into something a little more communicative. An alternative to that is starting with a log line and then expanding. For those who don't know, a log line is a single sentence that captures the heart of your book. If you look around online, you can find just absolute tons of different formulas for generating your log line. The formula that I crafted is the main character, a brief description of your main character with a brief descriptive of who or what they are, experiences the inciting incident in your story, which forces them to take their first step on their path through your novel toward an ultimate goal. This formula, I think, naturally allows you to incorporate your setting through either the MC's description or through the description, the details of the inciting incident. The main plot of the story should also be apparent in the stakes and goals, but this is key, without giving away the ending. You don't want spoilers in your query letter. If the agent dislikes anything about the ending, they will banish your query letter to the rejection pile. You want to get them hooked and invested on going on the whole journey of your book. So for my first example of my logline formula, I went with The Hobbit by Tolkien. And it goes something like this. Bilbo Baggins, an ordinary hobbit, is chosen by the wizard Gandalf, which forces him to pose as a burglar and join a troop of dwarves on their quest against a dragon. I did debate a little while on the ending. It could also be focused on reclaiming lost treasure or reclaiming the dwarves' homeland, but I opted for the dragon because that's a very iconic element that's going to tell a prospective agent, my story is high fantasy. Obviously, you know, we've got wizards, we've got dragons. If you're not doing a high fantasy story, though, I do have another example that's kind of, I tried to find something that was like the polar opposite of The Hobbit in as many ways as I could. So for my second logline example, I have A Man Called Ove by Frederick Backman. And that goes like this. Ove, a bitter widower, is ready to join his late wife when new neighbors back their car into his house, which forces him to meet I'm probably going to butcher her name, Parvane and her family. With this logline, the car is an automatic clue. We're doing some kind of relatively contemporary setting. The stakes are a much smaller scale. We're dealing with themes of loss and unexpected mayhem, which is all very relatable. I wouldn't call it slice of life, but it's much more down to earth than what The Hobbit is. So there's just kind of an example for you guys to see how the logline formula works. So in just a few moments, I'm going to set a 5-minute timer. You don't have to have a logline as part of your pitch, but you can. And having one as a reference can also help you start writing your pitch and keeping things very concise and on point. If you're starting with your logline, I want you to try and expand on it without introducing any secondary characters, Gandalf types, and other members of the inciting incident being something of an exception. I also want you to avoid any hints of subplots or side plots and keep what we talked about at the start of the pitch in mind. I'm going to put that list back up so you guys can see it while we take 5 minutes. And if you don't want to do the whole pitch, you don't have to. If you want to just do a log line, go for it. If you want to try and write a whole pitch for your story, you can go for that as well. All right, I'm putting 5 minutes on the clock. All right, that is 5 minutes. It really does go by very fast. Just to get us started, I'm going to go ahead and share my own log lines for Redemption and the pitch that I crafted. In the interest of full disclosure, I did prepare this ahead of time, so I have spent a good bit more than 5 minutes on it, and I'm still not particularly happy with it. Redemption is a dual protagonist story, so I went ahead and wrote 2 log lines, one for each of my main characters. Laura Hart is an anomalous metahuman. Laura Hart, an anomalous metahuman, discovers a man her father is holding captive, which forces her to dig into the things her father has been hiding from her. Victor Hunter, a contract mercenary, is taken prisoner once again in his uncommonly long life, which forces him to forge a tense alliance with Laura as he seeks his freedom and vengeance on her father. From those 2 log lines, I crafted this pitch. Laura Hart and Victor Hunter are both metahumans, but that is about all they have in common. Laura struggles with guilt over the fact her father, the founder and primary stakeholder in Hart Industries, is secretly experimenting on metahumans in search of a panacea, a cure to every ill. Yet she cannot bring herself to turn him in, rationalizing that a dozen souls cannot outweigh the millions of lives their company has saved through new medical technologies and philanthropic programs, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of employees and their families who would be negatively impacted. For Laura, it really isn't about the money, it's about doing the most good in the world. Meanwhile, Victor is one of those so-called volunteers, and he wants nothing more than his freedom and Dr. Hart's head. Confined to a device the size of an iron lung and kept heavily sedated, he is haunted by his past and struggling to control his increasingly volatile temper. Laura might be the key to everything if he can convince her to trust him, despite his blood-stained past. The two are thrown together when a well-armed and mysterious group attacks the facility. They fight their way out only to discover everyone has been taken captive or killed. Laura and Victor strike a truce, neither entirely trusting the other, as they set out to save or slaughter the man who brought them together. And that is my pitch in 3 paragraphs and about 230 words. It really does still need a lot of work, as it doesn't capture the tone of my book at all, but I feel like it's a solid start. I've established my 2 main protagonists, a world that has humans who aren't normal, hints of sci-fi and or possibly fantasy, and I have each protag's personal stakes and the main objective for the external plot that drives the characters and story forward, that being the pursuit of who attacked the facility and where they took Dr. Hart and company. I also have my protagonists working as obstacles to each other, with Victor wanting to kill Dr. Hart and Laura wanting to save him, and hints of how they are obstacles to themselves and their own internal struggles for change and redemption, as well as the mystery organization, which, spoiler, is revealed about halfway into the book to be a group of techno-terrorists. I could definitely revise this much better to capture the tone of the piece, which is largely introspective, punctuated by scenes of action, and a very cautious beginning to a romance that is more of a subplot than the main focus. I am open to thoughts and comments on my pitch draft and loglines, as well as anyone else who wishes to share their logline or what they were able to do in the 5 minutes. Just raise your hand, or Steph?
Well, I do have one log line that I did manage to complete, sorta. I can just read that off if you want.
Go for it.
Anne was different and had always wondered why. She was born at the dawning of the space age with Sputnik orbiting overhead and a brand new thing called television always on at her feet. If it weren't for when and where she found herself, her world might never have made any sense. How that?
Interesting. I get a sense of Anne as a character, and the world sounds maybe possibly a little futuristic, or maybe a period style futuristic piece, like kind of
Retro.
That's the term. Ooh, excuse me. I'm not sure what her stakes are, though, or her goals or anything.
Yeah.
But it's not bad. It's got
underdeveloped at the end, I think.
yeah. But you heard mine. Mine's pretty rough around the edges too, and I spent way more than 5 minutes on mine.
A lot more detail than I expected in yours.
Yeah, probably some of that detail is not necessary too. I keep eyeing bits.
I mean, what kind of density are you looking for when you're just pitching?
The main thing you want to capture is you want to capture enough of the stakes and enough of the characters that the agent is going to want to read more. And that is balancing scales with your eyes blindfolded and your hands tied behind your back.
That about sums it up.
So don't feel bad that it feels really hard and
oh, definitely
Gordian knot level mystery, because it is for absolutely everyone, and all you can do is just try to do your best. Did anyone else want to share a log line or the start to their pitch draft?
How can anybody follow up Steph though? It was so flowy and elegant.
Steph is a hard act to follow, but go for it.
Flowy, I
Go
like
for it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very flowy stuff. I gotta give it to you. Mine, just spoiler alert, is not like that. So for my character, Ayana, she is a girl who kind of has it all until she hears about how great that her friend's sex life is, which forces her to face some ugly truths about what her life is like with her boyfriend. It's kind of like a coming into awareness story where she's realizing how oblivious that she is to her own wants and needs.
Ah,
I like that. It's almost like a coming of age story, but it's more
Yeah,
of a
it's more, I
young
wanted a more
adult.
adult, well, more
Yeah,
so kind of an adult, because it's like,
adult.
because coming into awareness, so the reason I wanted to do this story was
hmm.
because like I'm in my mid-30s and there's some things
Mhm.
that you just really start learning about life that you don't realize
No
in your 20s.
kidding.
Yes. Yes.
So in this book, that's I'm having a lot of fun, but it does have like serious tones, and then of course the things that we realize as being grown, but are also kind of funny when you really think about it, like on a deeper level. You'd be like, oh man, you know.
In
So that's
retrospect, yeah.
yeah, that.
I like
Yeah.
it. I like it as a log line. It's good. It's solid. Um, JJ, don't want to put you on the spot. Did you want to share? No? I think you shook your head. Okay. No worries. That's fine. Okay. Just we did have a power outage earlier, so just as a point of time, we are technically at the end of the hour, so I'm going to try and speed run through the end of this, which shouldn't be too hard because the pitch was the bulk of the presentation. As it should be, because it is the heart and soul of your query letter. And the rest of this is very, very basic and formulaic and mostly self-explanatory. So we're just going to real quick look at some other essential info you will usually be asked to provide. And then if people want to stay a little bit later, I'm more than happy to take a few questions. After your pitch, you want to provide your metadata. Typically, this is just your word count to the nearest 1,000 or 10,000, your genre or subgenre, or one or two comparable titles. I've also seen just a little bit of tropes being thrown around. This is mostly with smaller publishers who are looking for niche trope publishing. If you're not familiar with the term tropes, it's basically a cliche. If you're doing something niche and looking for one of these smaller publishers, they will have in their guidelines what tropes or markets they're looking to target. But if you're aiming for a mid-level publisher or a larger publisher, you're just probably going to want to stick to your basic genre and subgenre and not mention tropes unless you're asked for them. We did mention comp titles or comparative titles earlier when we were discussing the personalized openings. What this is a title that would sit on the same shelf as your book in the bookstore. And if someone liked that book, they would probably like your book, or at least the elements that your book shares in common with that book. When you are looking for a comp title, you want to try to find something that was published by the agent you're querying, if possible. When you find your agent's profile, they often have a list of works they have had a hand in bringing to publishing. You can absolutely start there. If you don't have time to do that kind of digging, or you're just not getting anywhere with it, look for a title that was published 1 to 5 years ago, but was not on the New York Times top 10 bestseller list. This can be very, very hard to track down because you want something that is commercially successful but not super huge. And commercial sales data can be very difficult to locate. One of the other methods I've seen suggested is starting with a big classic title that shares some strong commonalities with your work, like The Hobbit, and looking online for lists that are in this vein of, if you liked The Hobbit, you will probably enjoy these hidden gems, or something else that indicates the books on the list are not super well known. But don't necessarily trust these lists up front. Do a little research into the title itself to see if it made a big splash anywhere that might be too big of a splash. If you're still not finding a book that squares up nicely next to yours, if you've got a messy genre blend like I do, you can start by digging into your primary genre or close subgenres. You can also look at nominees for book awards you would like to see on your own book. Wikipedia has a very nice page listing a large number of literary awards. Again, I would say be careful comparing yourself to any winners and focus more on nominees, because you don't want to come off to the agent as if you are either incompetent or arrogant or worse, both. The other essential you're pretty much always going to be asked for is an author bio, but again, remember, this is your query letter. It's a business letter. This is not going to be anything like the author bio that goes in the back of your book in most cases. This author bio is more like a super short resume for a job. You're providing your awards, if you've had any, your nominations, if you've had any other published works you have, particularly if they are relevant to the work you're pitching, and any proof of expertise or experience, such as a degree in history if you're writing historical fiction. You can also add a touch of personality to your author bio, but you don't want to include personal details that don't have a relevant bearing on your novel, like your marriage status, your pets, your kids, where you live. These are the things that are going to go in your book bio, not your query letter bio. You also absolutely do not want to talk about how long you have been writing or how much you love writing. This is something agents take for granted, and they do not want to hear it again and again and again as they work their way through the query letter pile. Once you've provided all this essential information, you want your closing to be just as tight and polite as your opening was. Thank the agent for their time and sign off. Include your contact info below your signature, like it's the footer on the page, unless the guidelines have specified you to provide it elsewhere. Remember, guidelines are going to override any rule or any piece of advice you're getting from me or anyone else. Somebody went to the trouble of writing those guidelines because they got tired of dealing with something. And last but not least, I have a couple of small resources for people who are trying to figure out where the heck to look to find an agent. These are websites that are basically databases of agents and editors who are either looking for manuscripts actively or periodically. Most of the entries from what I looked at have a wealth of the kind of information we've discussed finding about your agent, including previous titles and guidelines. They often have links to websites or social platforms, and the guidelines are generally, from what I've been seeing, very easy to find if they're not right there up front on the landing page. And I said we were going to speed run this, and speed run it we have. Does anyone have any questions? Brittany, this was primarily a lesson at your request from day one. You wanted the query letter. Did we cover everything you wanted to cover?
Yes, you actually did. But on a side note, I really do want to turn this into a real query letter eventually. I guess right now my question is, how much do you charge to like look over query letters, or do you even do that? first? I guess that's the first question.
That is not something I would feel comfortable offering as a professional service, primarily because my focus is on independent publishing. I have the basics, but I would not want to put myself in that position. And also, I have no idea what those market rates would be, but I imagine they're a little bit insane because everything around traditional
Yes.
publishing seems to have an insane market rate.
Oh, people are making money from off of us.
Oh, I bet. Is it possible that an AI could be used to help at least kind of crisp it up or shorten it or lengthen it or whatever it needed? Certainly, it could do some of the research work.
I have been experimenting a little bit with AI, just trying to find the boundary lines between what people think it can do and what it can actually do, and how much of a threat or aid it can be to me as a writer. And in my experience, I've found that the AI is very good at formulaic stuff. So I would not hesitate too much in using it around your opening, your closing, helping you figure out your genre, your metadata, that sort of thing. But I would personally keep the AI away from tinkering with your pitch, except insofar as analyzing it and providing suggestions. Don't let it rewrite your pitch.
No kidding.
It's not very good at that, in my experience.
It's still, it could take the edge off in terms of getting a start, you know?
Yeah, no, I think it's very useful. One of the biggest things I've found it to be useful for is helping me check large amounts of text for certain key elements I know I'm bad about doing, like neglecting to have enough details to ground the setting. I have a big problem with void space, especially in my first drafts. So asking it, where can I put in, the details that they're in this office space with this fancy bookcase and that, and it'll suggest things to me, and some of the suggestions will be silly and absolutely not a good place to put it. But sometimes it's, broken clock is right twice a day. Sometimes it does really come up with some very good suggestions, and I have found it useful, though I do try not to rely on it.
I have a friend who's working on his manuscript at this point, and he's using AI as an editor, or rather to just not edit it, but as a I don't know what you'd call it, but just for the advice of it. And it discovered that he had used the same phrase to discuss and characterize this aspect of what he was writing about 47 times the same exact way.
Oh my goodness!
Had the number,
Yes, that
really
is what it is very good at.
And rather repetitive in that regard.
Yes, it's very good for the most part at proofreading, and it's very good for the most part at detecting patterns. Don't use AI for developmental editing. It cannot handle it.
No, that wasn't it. I mean,
it just cannot yet at this point.
Not that phase, no.
Yeah. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Just a reminder, the writing events, I'm doing Odyssey and Ink until September 16th. Laurel's back on the 25th. October is Scary Storytelling Month. November is our VR Writing Month, VR Rimo. We're going to be meeting daily, I think almost daily, if not daily. And then December is Holiday Storytelling. I did have a little info panel on VR Rimo. We're doing 50,000 words in 30 days. We're hanging out in VR chat and Engage XR. Laurel's going to have prompt sessions for us, speed writing, writing games, and just lots of social support. And This is the Creative Writing Meetup. We're here every Tuesday in Engage, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UK, 7 a.m. Hong Kong, and 10 a.m. for Sydney. So that pretty much covers the globe, and this is a great little group. I always love coming here.
Ditto. Thank you
It's a
very
little
much.
terrifying teaching, but
You've
I
been very
think I'm mostly
informative.
getting
That's
it.
the whole bowl.
Well, this was great. Like, this honestly was really great.
Yeah, I agree.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tangwystle. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Indeed.
Yay!